And some people are just making money. Because look at this. Whatever it is, it's almost $1 or whatever, 50 cents or whatever. We see, I mean, water should be free. I remember those days we just go to parks and drink water, no casas, anything. But people are making fortunes, and they're going to continue making fortunes out of us. But water, and more than just water, we have tremendous resources in this country, so, and even in this town. I'm very fortunate to be here to see so much waste, actually.
All right, now each candidate will get a 1-minute rebuttal if they choose to use so. And we're starting again with Mr. Bates.
There's another dimension to this issue that I think needs to be explored. It's how this decision was reached. It involves conflict of interest. I think there will be discussion about that topic over the next few days. This is not the forum to address that. But I think all components of how this major long-term decision got reached should be explored.
Thank you. I just want to address a few things. As far as water rights, this is the Turlock Irrigation District water rights, so actually what you said was not correct. When you look at Turlock Irrigation District's history of providing water to its farmers, over the 130 plus years it's been around, it's never had a 0% allocation for farmers. So the idea that during a drought for phase 1, we've been reassured by our Director of Municipal Services that there will be water that goes through there. The importance of putting water through our surface water plant is the fact that when we have wells that go offline like we do now, we don't have to spend $500,000 to $1.5 million for wellhead treatment. We can allow that water to replenish and dilute the arsenic or nitrates or TCP and actually use a robust conjunctive use strategy to make sure we have enough water. And so the idea that you want to throw out things like conflict of interest or you were going to triple your water rates, it's just fear tactics. And in all honesty, this is the only solution that we have. It's a solution we've been talking about for 3 decades, something that all 5 members of the City Council of Ceres and all 5 council members of the City of Turlock, until you started running for mayor, were actually in favor of. And so I think it's the one solution that we need to focus on, and we need to focus on making sure you have the right facts when you look at your water rates.
So Mr. Bates spoke about a conflict of interest and how this came about. He is right that this isn't the venue, but there are some issues that concern me greatly. One of the things I worry about is that Modesto irrigation was a part of this conversation all along. Modesto, the city of Modesto, Houston, all of these pulled out. So have we actually looked into it and said, yes, let's go ahead and pipe into there. How much would that cost us? In reference to just saying, okay, we're just going to do it with these 2 and we're going to call it an agreement. I did vote no on it previously when you weren't on council or were not elected. So I've been the one who continuously is worried about the ratepayer, the person who cannot afford it. A fixed income, the state law says that we cannot subsidize for you. And that concerns me greatly. There are a lot of people on fixed incomes who are not going to be able to have a 1%, 2% increase, much less a 20, a 60% or more.
Well, then again, if we stop wasting our water, we have it, and we don't need to pay no more. Our water's there, keep running, as long as we maintain, certain amounts of water just for what we need, not waste it. I mean, and bring all these new systems that drop in for the fields, whatever. Like again, when I was irrigating, I seen the water just keep rolling and evaporating and all that. So I think it's enough. And yeah, certainly there is conflict of interest. Of course, we all know that. We know where the monies go. But and they think it's negative. No, it's not negative. We just look like negative, but in reality, there is people that are suffering to afford even a right to go to Modesto. When I was trying to go to school, I couldn't even afford that, much less if the water goes up. My folks don't have really the resources, including myself. That's why you don't see signs for me, because I cannot afford them.
All right, thank you, candidates. Our next question is about roads. The condition of Turlock's roads is bad and continues to deteriorate. In 2013, which is the most recent data, consulting firms drove every road in Turlock in order to ascertain the quality of the streets and rate them on a pavement condition index, which ranks roads from 1 to 100, with 70 to 100 representing good to excellent, 50 to 70 being at risk, 25 to 50 being poor, and 0 to 25 being failed. Turlock received the 2nd lowest ranking in the county with a 67. What is your plan to improve the condition of Turlock's roadways?
So
Mr. Soiza?
it's a great question. We hear this all the time, and as I've said, I'm a proponent of Measure L, which was passed overwhelmingly by over 70% of voters here in Turlock for a half-cent sales tax. And so we have taken that money and we told voters exactly what we were going to do. We are going to tackle the most used roads that are in the worst condition first, and that is West Main. West Main had areas, we talked about the PCI, areas that were 19 out of 100, and we had people traveling that road. And so we had to accumulate that money, and we're using it for roads. And so West Main is first, and then East Avenue, Golden State, Olive, and then we're going to hit some of our neighborhood roads. But Measure L funds are not just what you accumulate, it's what you can use to leverage other funds at the state and federal level. So when I went up to Sacramento and talked to the California Transportation Commission about getting SB1 funds down here for Folkerth Road, they looked at our county. They looked and said, you are self-help. You are investing in yourself, so we will invest in you. And that's why half of that cost of that project is funded by rates that are outside of here. So you look at other projects like Monte Vista, where you're going to see repavement. You look at places like Wayside, where we're going to retool that intersection to make it safer for pedestrians and traffic alike. And these are all non-general fund dollars. And I think that's very important because our general fund is used predominantly, over 2/3, for our public safety officers and firefighters. And we need to make sure we protect that. There is road money out there. We spend it already. It's in Sacramento and DC. And it's incumbent upon us as elected officials to go and grab it and bring it back here to Turlock. And we've been very successful. Similarly, we need to work regionally. You talked about regional solutions to water. Transportation is a regional problem that we need to have a regional solution for. And so I work with the cities of Modesto and Ceres on Stancog, and we just approved $5.5 million for the transit station that's going to be regional for trains up in Modesto. We're having our own groundbreaking, ribbon cutting tomorrow for a transit center, and we'll bring ACE train down here eventually. So we need to think regionally about transportation. We are bringing dollars back into Turlock, and we're going to leverage those dollars so we can get even more going forward.
I happen to be the only elected official in the entire county who voted no on Measure L. I also didn't support Measure B. I'm not a real tax person. I have no problem if you independently want to do that for yourself, tax yourself, that's fine. But what I have a problem with is, since the early 1980s, we have not taken a dollar from our general fund, which is your money, and put it into roads. So until I can say, I've tried, used your money, and it's not enough, I don't want to ask you for more money. That's just my philosophy in life. There are other ways to do this, and I think that we can do this without taxing you anymore. You're already going to get increased with your water, so we have to find a way for you to be able to save $1. So I'd like to look into the Turlock transient occupancy tax and how we can utilize that. I think that we need to start looking at these utility businesses that come through and they compromise by putting a hole in the ground because they need to put something in, fix something. And then they fix it with just a little strip. Well, that little strip is absolutely nothing but a pothole pending. At any time it will become bad. So I think we need to look at solutions that won't cost you any more money and that will cost the people who are actually damaging our roads, and work towards different ideas and actually put some of our money back into our mouth here by saying, yes, we're going to give you some of our general fund, your money, to fix your roads, not just the intersections.
Mr. Franco?
Well, all I can say that, we are really fortunate to have what we have, but except that I see or notice that in our side, in the west side, for whatever reasons, is destroying our cars. And by destroying our cars, it's destroying our transportation, meaning that it's costing us more, and it's expensive for repairing our cars. It's costing us to take it to the job and flat tires on the whole thing. So it's really, somehow what I feel that in any other size of the town, roads are nice, but when you go to our town, they is patching every time. And it's something that is almost, you cannot tolerate that. And you can see how unfortunate once you jump the trucks or whatever in this side of town, you go through that area, the west side has always been missing for whatever reason if they is patching. But the thing I believe, give us the machinery, maybe we can find volunteers, and I'm willing to volunteer to fix it. If you don't want to spend money, let me have a chava help you to fix the roads.
Okay, sometimes this reminds me of that book they wrote about the 2-minute manager. We have these problems that have been developing over 10, 20, 30, and 40 years, and we're trying to come up with solutions in 2-minute sound bites. One of the things I've done, I'm not a real social media guy, but I've put up a website, and I have on that website what I call Brad's Take. and I have written and scripted and thought about these significant issues. I have 3 Brad's takes on roads. So I go into detail about my proposal. I'll give the website now, Brad Bates, the number 4, Turlock Mayor again, 2018.com. So I'd ask you to go there, because I've given some thought to this, and I have several options. Now, to answer the question, I'm going to throw out 2 ideas. The number 1 involves bonding. The only way we're going to get any meaningful work done is if we actually figure out a way to start paying for roads now. And I think that bonding and using our bonding capacity could be one of those steps. The second thing, and this is a little bit outside the box thinking, I know, or I understand, that the county has their own paving crew, and they have their own equipment. Well, if we're going to have 25 years of funds coming from Measure L, which I don't think is the correct measure, I do think that they're going to use most, if not all, of that money on the West Main project for the next 2 years. So that schedule that you see that shows other roads, I think that's a little bit, premature. We're not going to see those roads. But what if we start to think about maybe having our own paving crew, having our own equipment, using some of those funds to start paving our own roads? Numbers that I've heard over the life of this is upwards of $25 million. So if the county can do it, maybe we can do it. Maybe we can contract to do paving for other people. Maybe we can begin to take a little bit more of our destiny when it comes to roads into our own hands, instead of having the state tell us what they're going to help participate with us on.
All right, 1 minute rebuttal time.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Measure L not being the right formula or the right tax formula for us, but I want to just mention one key component is the fact that I worked with our county leaders and I worked with our city leaders to make sure our spending formula benefited Turlock. In fact, we are one of those rare areas where our sales tax is 2% above our population. So when we have money coming back to us for Measure L, I said it needs to be based off a sales tax, not your population. So that's an extra $25 million we will see in the city of Turlock over the course of that Measure L. And as far as TOT goes, that goes into the general fund. That's about $1 million in the general fund. We have to then say, okay, well, where are we going to get that extra $1 million for police services and fire services and dispatch and everything else? So it's a little faulty there. And as far as Folkerth, that was $6 million that you voted against. $6 million that was at Sacramento that was there for other communities to take. I am not going to ask you to have your general fund dollars, which is already stretched very thin, go towards roads when there's money out there that I can work hard to go acquire and bring back here to the city of Turlock.
So here's the bad news. Our sales tax revenue, which was what everything was predicated on for Measure L, has been declining for the last 3 quarters. That's not a good sign. Our budget is we're losing money faster than we can bring it in. So revenue, $1 in, $2-3 out. This isn't going to work for us. So we have to find other alternatives. I worry about the fact that we had a meeting and it was not one citizen was there, one citizen, but they're running for office. We had a special meeting the other day where we should be all proud. We're gonna do something with Folkerth. So we're gonna spend $20 million or whatever to do Folkerth in '99. We had a meeting 5 days later. We could have had that meeting and you could have all heard about it and said, wow, our money's going somewhere. But we had a special meeting and we had to get through it. When I asked why are we doing it? Is it gonna cost money if we wait 5 days? And I was told, we already planned the celebration. That's not how this is done. This is your tax money and we need to make sure that we spend it correctly.
Please hold your applause till the end. Thank you. Mr. Franco?
Oh, I guess we keep, doing the same thing. It's just a matter of just, really helping each other and see the ones that are maybe less fortunate. Like I say, we all we need is just bring us some payment or whatever. We'll put it there and forget about the millions and millions, because I cannot even count that many millions. I know it goes somewhere, but they always cover, like water interest groups or whatever it is. So again, we are the ones that probably suffer most because of the transportation and the fixing our cars. So help us with something that at least bring us some material.
Mr. Bates, your rebuttal, if you choose to do
Well,
so.
I just believe that Measure L was misrepresented from the very beginning. From the very start, all you heard was local roads first. That's all you heard. Everybody heard that. And even if you go to the Measure L website today, the only thing on that face page is Measure L local roads first. Now, I'm sorry, but I think most people, everybody, when you say you're spending or you're going to pass a tax for local roads, you tend to think those are the roads, plural, you drive on. Now, if you're going to drive on West Main, then okay. But if you're going to drive on any other street in Turlock, the local roads that I think a lot of these folks thought they were voting for, that's not going to happen. So that's my opinion, but I just have a real hard time when government is not fully honest and transparent with their intentions, and that goes for how you promote and advertise your projects. Anytime the city of Turlock partners with the county of Stanislaus, we end up on the short end of the stick. It's been that way time immemorial.
Okay, thank you. Our next question will be on the budget. For the 2017 fiscal year, the city of Turlock is projected to have a fund deficit of $1.3 million. For the 2018-19 fiscal year, the deficit spending is projected to be at $3.2 million, leaving a general fund reserve balance under the $6.5 million threshold mandated for the city to maintain by a previous resolution. The city of Turlock's sales tax revenue has also continued to steadily decline for 9 consecutive months. The city's sales tax update for the first quarter of 2018 shows that just over $3 million was collected in sales tax revenue, which is 4.3% decrease from the same time period last year. What is your plan to secure Turlock's economic future? Ms. Blueblack?
So thank you for telling everybody that our finances are terrible. We need to be honest with you because I think you can all help us. There's a lot of smart people in this room that would be able to sit back and say, here, this is what we need to do. What's happening right now is we're spending down on our reserve in a good economy. Basically, what we're doing is we're paying our salary and benefits out of our reserve, which is absolutely the worst thing you can do. And I personally can't vote for that. There are things that we had to vote for, such as the radios. I'm behind all that. I get that there are emergencies and we have to take care of those things. When our new city manager finally got in place after a year of not having one, I sent an email to our finance director and asked, with him in a loop, okay, am I correct in my assertions that this is what's going on? And the final thing that will just scare you is at this rate, this is authored by our finance officer, at this rate, without a dramatic revenue stream increase to the general fund, at least $3 million per fiscal year, the city of Turlock will have exhausted the general fund reserve by 6/30/2021.
Mr. Franco?
Well, then again, I mean, we're just wasting time left and right. Wherever the money goes and keep going. And we know there's, like I said, many millions that goes and goes. But the thing is, the problem is sometimes our own citizens. I know really the power is within you guys. I mean, it's the voters. Voters decide. Actually, you decide what have to be done, but also needed to be included, and also need to be more into whatever meetings or whatever to stop what is going wrong. You know what is going wrong, but you needed to be participating. And you know, we're going to be like any other city because we keep spending whatever it is. And it's hard to maintain, but we can do it. I mean, it's not really hard. I see so much resources all over.
Mr. Bates?
One of the problems is we have absolutely no idea where we are, okay? This has been like a pinball in a pinball machine, the way things have been bouncing around. I mean, even just a few weeks ago, you know, we have a front page headline, Soyseth, the state of our city is strong. The mayor said, go out and tell everybody you talk to, the state of our city is strong. That is not true, and it's extremely disingenuous to me. I know that the media is having a hard time getting their message out, but you, the voters, are being deprived of the opportunity to know what is going on in your city. We are facing an extremely serious financial future. The new city manager is acknowledging that. Once again, I have done a Brad's Take on my website where I give a fairly thorough analysis of exactly how this is coming about. But the very serious question that we're facing right now is we have been under the delusion that things are okay. We have gone down in sales tax revenue for 3 continuous quarters. If the economy takes a dip, that's going to add to it. I have pointed out in another one of my Brad's takes that if the PERS people, the Public Employee Retirement System, if they come in with an assessment, we could be facing a perfect storm. Now, the mayor's going to say, well, you're just trying to be an alarmist, you're just using scare tactics. Well, I'm not trying to do that because I don't want this job bad enough to try and scare you folks into it. But as I keep saying, you got to take off the rose-colored glasses. You have got to face reality. Once the citizens face the reality of the situation, then we will accept, the decision that you make. But until you understand how serious the situation is, it's really difficult for us to try and lead, from this platform.
Thank you. So I said in my opening statement about how we need to pay off debt when we can, we need to save when we can, and we need to reinvest when we can. And that's exactly what we've been doing. And so when I say we pay off debt, there was $5.5 million of PERS debt, actually, that we took money from a building sale and some general fund reserves, and we actually paid that off. And by paying that off early, that's $600,000 in interest savings that we are going to bring back per year for 10 years that we're going to be putting back into those PERS funds. So we've actually were very aggressive. And so that dipped down our reserves to about $6.9 million. But then we built it back up over the course of 3 years to $11 million, right? We did that purposely, knowing that our MOUs, our memorandums of understanding with all of our unions were coming to us. And we need to make sure we save for that money so we could reinvest into those departments. And so I've asked, actually, for the couple times I've met with you, Mr. Bates, to actually tell me what on that $3.1 million that we've just invested in a radio system, $1 million in some of our employees, and $1 million specifically in our police salaries and benefits, what you would take off of that. Because these are not frivolous expenditures. These are investments into our city. And so it's just interesting to hear and to hear the alarmist rhetoric, especially when you voted for $2.9 million of the 3.1, Ms. Bublak. And I think it's just interesting because we need to be realistic with ourselves of the fact that we do need to go get new revenue sources, whether that's border development. There are places outside of it here, they're right next to Turlock that have zero sales tax coming to Turlock. And I've been in discussions to try and bring 30, 40, 50% back here. We do need to talk about TOT by raising it perhaps countywide by 3% on those that are visitors here that use our services. By raising it 3%, you're looking at between $500,000 to $750,000 for the general fund. You can actually bring that back in and actually increase that revenue. So I will not stand by and hoard our money in our reserves while our police department, our fire department, our dispatchers plead with us to make sure we pay at a competitive salary to keep them here. Because keeping a community safe, which our crime rates are down 5%, so my hat's off to our officers, but keeping a community safe is economic development and will keep our reserves strong.
Ms. Bublak, do you have a rebuttal?
Absolutely. So I did vote for that, and then in hindsight, I think that I anticipated that would be the PERS allocation that we were paying down on would actually be held somewhere else and not just put back into the coffer, so to speak, and then spent some other way, such as litigations where we spent a tremendous amount of money in the last year. We spent money that we didn't need to. And when we talk about salaries, I was the one who was opposing hiring more people till we started paying our people correctly. We can't hire people and then not have money, and now we're gonna end up having to lay people off. I've done that before, and I am not a fan of that. And having no one else having experienced that on council as we speak, they don't understand, and so they were hiring more people to cover $130,000 that we needed to get through for 2 more months. And then finally, I want everybody to understand that we have to start doing something. We have to start building our economic development. We need to do something. I actually wanted to have an economic development revenue workshop, and at the very last second, it made it into being marijuana.
Mr. Franco, do you have a rebuttal? Mr. Bates, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, I do. Okay, first of all, if I'm elected, I'm going to ask for a full forensic audit with a 3-year look back. We are going to finally find out exactly where we stand in all levels and all divisions. This idea of hide the numbers, that's going to stop. The second thing, Mayor, when you say, well, the radio, okay, well, you knew about that. That was known about 5 years ago. That was pointed out as an urgency measure 5 years ago. And all of a sudden, it comes up as an urgency matter. Salaries, okay, yes, we have to support police and fire. But you know what? I do not think that we should be negotiating in an election year. I would even propose that negotiations for the police and fire, public safety, should take place in off years. This idea that we just finished negotiations right before an election, I find that somewhat disheartening, okay? The final thing is, these things have to be agendized. Part of the problem is they don't get talked about. This issue comes up and now all of a sudden it's a crisis. This should have been on the agenda to be talked about. What is our financial situation? What are our plans for economic development? Instead of everything being on a rush, urgency, emergency basis, it should be on the agenda.
And it is. But going back to hiding the numbers, one of the things I said when I came in was that not only would I talk about when we were in bad condition, but I'd say when we were in good condition. And so that is important to some of our unions. When we go in and negotiate, we need to say when we actually do have money to reinvest into them. And so that's what I've done, and that's why I talk about those numbers the way I do. As far as building economic development, you look at Folkerth Road, for example. That $12 million, well, $12+ million intersection is going to allow for 1,000 trucks per day. That's going to allow our industries to build out. That's going to allow for quality jobs to be here, sales tax revenue to go up. So these are the big picture things that we need to do to invest in our infrastructure, to invest in our water resources so that we can bring in new industries that would actually help us. So I think that at the end of the day, it's all intertwined, but we have been very forthright about where our numbers are with our unions, and we are going to go actively engage in getting other sources of revenue.
All right, our next question is on public safety. Turlock's public safety departments have been dealing with critical staffing issues for some time. In February, the City Council approved lateral new hire salary bonuses for police officers and dispatchers. In March, the Council approved spending over $72,000 in fiscal year 17-18 and an additional $329,000 in 18-19 to hire 3 additional firefighters. Then in April, the Council approved spending over $713,000 in additional expenses to hire more officers, staff, and equipment. While new positions have been added, the police departments have trouble recruiting and retaining officers and dispatchers. What is your plan to support the city's public safety departments and fund them? Mr. Franco?
Well, I don't have that much to say except that, we need to have safety, but as far as I've seen, it's been difficult because it takes them some time to get to whatever they needed, and for whatever reasons, I know they have been extending, but it's been incidents close by where we are. It's kind of unfortunate we have people left and right kind of getting killed, and I think more than expending maybe a little bit in that, but also more like giving our youth a little education so they don't keep committing the crimes. So that way we can avoid some of that, because, you know, educating is the key to me, not keep spending. We can spend more in jails and more police, never ends. I think it ends when education, the youth, are younger people.
Mr. Bates?
Well, again, I think everybody knows that public safety is absolutely a #1 priority. Goes without saying, but I think I'd like to point out that, you know, we know that 3/4 of our general fund money goes to public safety. It's a major driver. Here's what I will say. We have to be very careful about aligning the mission of our public safety people with the resources and the manpower. Now, those are just not words I've strung together. I really think that it is time for us to look very carefully at the mission of our public safety people and how we're deploying 3/4 of our budget to meet that mission, both in the resources that we have and the manpower. I would suggest that a very thorough, critical, objective, outside look would be appropriate. Yeah, that's the comment I'd like to make.
So, absolutely, public safety, we should all say it is our #1 priority, but we should also put our money where our mouth is with it, and that's what we've done. When I came in, you look at the fire department, and there were small things and large things that we needed to take care of. Each firefighter talked to me about how their SCBAs, they didn't have an individual one, which is their mask when they go in to a fire. Exhaust removal equipment, where basically you fire up that fire engine and those carcinogens go into the firehouse, and cancer, which is one of the #1 causes of death among firefighters, that was something we were facing with. So we knocked those off. We had a lemon fire engine where it basically wouldn't fire up. So we decided to fight the company, get some money, and actually reinvest in 2 new engines. And so we keep continuing to reinvest in that department. Same with the police department, absolutely. So the canine unit was no longer here, so we brought that back with 2 dogs. Our SWAT team, we've strengthened that SWAT team. We have worked with them on looking at a crime analyst we brought on to look at predictive policing, which will hopefully bleed into community policing. We have increased the numbers for our police officers, and I'm very proud of that. But overall, it is really tough to recruit the quality applicants for the police department statewide, not just in Turlock. But you have to meet a very high threshold, and we are not willing to sacrifice the quality and the standards to bring in new police officers here. So we need to have incentives like we have. $16,000 for a lateral transfer here to the city of Turlock. We are also making sure that our salaries are competitive, so that that's why we've invested over $1 million in our police department to make it attractive for folks to stay here or to come here to Turlock. And so those are large investments, but that's what we'll continue to do and to make sure that our public safety is number one. I will say that our police officers have done a great job. Our crime rates are down 5% across the board. We do have areas for improvement, but I think that we will get there.
So as the sole public safety officer seated in this table of 23 years as a police officer, working with fire directly for all of that time, and on an ambulance 7 years prior to that as well, I pretty much understand public safety and what we need and what we can afford. So back in the room we have former Mayor Lazar. When I got on council with him when he became mayor, we actually strategically set up a mission to start getting ourselves set up for public safety, for fire and police. And we were doing a phenomenal job, even in a bad economy. We were working towards it. And then somehow, all of a sudden, we are just losing people faster than we can keep them. Our dispatchers are having to go into their restroom with their headsets on. This is just not acceptable. Gary speaks about the fact that we had some health and safety issues. We address those when they were brought to us. If we don't hear about them, we don't know. And there are channels of communication that we need to work on so that we have a city manager in place and we can hear about these things. But so what I'm really worried about is that we did put all this money into our salaries. That's great. But we also put into fluff positions that we'll never fill. He just talked about how difficult it is to hire police officers. We just put ourselves about $400,000, $500,000 in the hole that we're not going to be able to hire these people soon. We should be planning so that we can do what we can with the money that we have, and then at such time as we have more money, we can hire more people. But we still have too many police officers that aren't filled. We've got our fire filled now. We have to make sure that we're doing the right thing. As far as deployment, that's the chief's positions. Fire and police, they get to do what they need to do, and that is the city manager to tell them if they're not doing it correctly.
Mr. Franco, would you like a rebuttal? Mr. Bates, would you like a rebuttal?
If the money is there, then public safety is absolutely a #1 priority. But that's a pretty big if. When you run out of money, the promises mean nothing. I'm concerned that Mayor Soyseth has been so directly involved with the police and the fire and the unions and the negotiations, asking to be seated at the negotiation table. This is the job of the city manager, okay? I am fully 100% in favor of supporting our police and our fire to the best of our ability. But my father trained me that a problem is not a problem if you have the money to solve the problem. That's if you have the money. Ask the folks up in Stockton, ask Stockton employees. They know what it's like to go through bankruptcy. All bets are off. We have a city just to the south that is now under a watch, okay? This notion that a city can't go into financial hardship or potentially go bankrupt is very real, and it's very near to us, and we should take it very seriously.
No, it's a very serious issue, and that's why I continue to ask my colleagues at this table what is fluff, what they would take off of that list, and they continue not to answer the question. But at the same time, we do need to make sure that we are trying to meet our goals of 1.33 officers to 1,000. And so we are going to put those positions there, and as you said, if they're not going to be filled, that money goes, it's just budgeted. It will go back into our coffers, and we will continue to try and get them. But if there are quality applicants that want to come to Turlock, I want to make sure we're ready for them and that we can make sure that they're on the streets. And as far as me being too close to unions and sitting at the table, that was an offer because the unions came to me and said that the discussions they were having with the negotiator perhaps were not being translated accurately to us as a council. And so I offered to be an observer and listen to make sure it was translated accurately by our negotiator. Because that's what I've said I would do. I said I would be honest with them where our resources were, and I would take the time and effort to sit there to make sure they were getting a fair share when they were at the negotiating table.
So it all comes back to public safety and then funding. Again, we have our reserves being spent down on personnel and their salaries, and that's not something that we can sustain. So we have to make certain that the positions we have filled are all that we're going to do. We shouldn't have hired more people in hopes that we could do something else when we still have fire negotiations coming up in January, and we have a huge, our biggest union still has to be attributed to. We need to make sure all of our employees feel as if they are validated and not lie to them when they come to the table and we tell them we'll give you 1% and we have a healthy reserve. That's not right. That's not what they want to hear. Then they think you don't have any value in them. Tell them we don't have any money, and then they'll help us work towards the solution.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I wanted to remind, we have 2 more questions left from the journal, but we are taking your questions. If you have a question, please write it on an index card. If you need an index card or another index card, please raise your hand, and the journal staff will get you one. And then raise your hand again, and they'll collect them over the next 2 questions, or you can return them yourself to the table in the far corner. And like I said, we have 2 more journal questions left. This next question is about homelessness. Community groups and the City Council have recently met to address the issue of homelessness. In Turlock, as well as homelessness in Turlock, as well as illegal activities perpetrated by vagrants in the city's parks and other public spaces. What role do you think the City of Turlock should play in addressing homelessness? Mr. Bates?
Well, once again, I'm going to go back to my website, my Brad's Takes. I have given a dissertation on the homeless and how I think the situation should be addressed. I break it down into 4 components. Again, when you talk about homeless, it's a catch-all. This is a problem that's been developing over years. You can't put everybody into the same category. You have a criminal element, you have a dependency element, you have a true homeless element, you have refugees. They're all different components. I don't have the answer, okay? I have a way that I would approach it. I know that I would use small task forces. I know who I would put in charge of those task forces. For example, for the criminal element, obviously the police chief would be formulated on that task force. We have to break it up. We have to identify each individual unit. We have to address it separately. But folks, if I had the answer in 2 minutes to homeless, I wouldn't be here right now. I would have written the book. I would have sold it to every city in the state of California, and I'd be making the royalties. It's a difficult, challenging problem. It's going to take a community-wide effort, and that's it.
Thank you. I agree with you. It is a very complex issue, and it's something that we've been tackling, and it's something we need to tackle at a regional level. It is actually a statewide issue right now. You see what's going on up in the city of Modesto, where they've had to turn over a park to homeless individuals. They're staying there because they don't have enough beds. And that's why I was up there at the county talking with them and having a conversation at their board meeting about the declaration of perhaps an emergency for shelter beds, which would free up money to come down here and assist. But locally, what we're doing is very progressive. We actually have a navigator now through the Turlock Gospel Mission that is an individual that is personally going out and talking with those that are in need and asking what those needs are. Do they need, is it financial hardship? Is it substance abuse? Is it medication in Modesto that they need? And we're working to get them to the location, whether it be We Care or the Gospel Mission or Salvation Army, and working to get them into the services that they need. Additionally, this navigator is a point person for our downtown businesses that are adversely affected by this issue. And so they can call, and this individual will come and help solve some of those issues. But I think we also need to increase some of our laws that we have on our books. Our public spaces need to be for all residents and all visitors. And so we need to make sure that it is healthy and safe and clean. So we have decreased the hours. While I disagreed with all parks all over the city, I do think that in our downtown core it's important. So we've decreased the hours, increased the lighting. We are going to need to enforce some of our laws on our books with unleashed unlicensed dogs and different things that are basically making sure that they're in compliance with our ordinances so that others can come and enjoy those parks and be safe and feel safe. When I hear a small business come to me and tell me that from one side of the tracks to the other, his patrons will no longer come from on Main Street to come patron, and his sales are down by 42% because he's scared of Central Park, there is an issue. And yes, it's an emergency. That's an economic emergency for some of these small business owners. And so I will address that, and we will come together as a team. We will work with our county and state partners to make sure we leverage the resources to address this problem holistically.
So homelessness is obviously a state issue, and we're not going to arrest our way out of this. There are a minimum of 3 components to it. You have those who will be able to be fed some information and they can achieve what they need to from that. There are others that they're going to need some assistance with, whether it's substance abuse or something of that nature, and help them with mental health. We can help them to do something. And then finally, there's those that are just going to be problematic, and they're going to fight their right to do whatever they wish. So we need to start building our partnerships again and our collaborations. We haven't been working with anyone. One of the problems with not having a city manager and a city attorney for a long time is that we lost a opportunity for a year and a half to have that navigator because we didn't have a contract. And it was only because someone came and told me. I didn't even know we had a homeless meeting. I didn't know that there was a committee. And I would think that I would have some insight, having worked up in Modesto and Richmond as well as a police officer. I know what's going on. I know what the solutions have been and what have worked. And I would have loved to come to the table a little earlier than just recently. We're going to have to do something. We cannot arrest our way out of this. And obviously the state of California has decided they're going to give us some money back. They stole our redevelopment funds, and now they want to give it back to us for homelessness. So if that's the case, we need to be there. And all of us, all 5 of us elected officials, need to decide what we're going to do with the community. And if I become mayor, we're going to have a task force instantaneously to discuss this, and then to separate it so that we can actually piece it out and start making some solutions real and making progress.
Mr. Franklin?
Can we ever include them to tell us how they feel, how that happens? Do we really have one with us here to let us know why and what it is? Are we really including them? What happened to them? Where are they? We isolate them. We don't have no humanity. We ignore them. Once we lose a job, then we know what it is. Once you lose your job, you lose everything. And then you become one. And then you live through that experience what it is to be one. And I've been very close, very fortunate to be with them, sometimes talk to them, and it hurts my feelings because we have lost a touch of love. And that's what we need, caring enough for one another. Because without that, I'm not here to preaching, but we don't include them. You don't see them. Where are they? Are they criminals? That's what we think. But no, we really have to listen clearly and maybe to our mindset. Consciousness, what have we done? It can be one of us one day.
Mr. Bates, would you like a rebuttal?
As I mentioned, I was mayor for 8 years. I was in business for 45 years. I recently retired. In all that time, I never, ever saw one entity, business or government, that could operate from crisis to crisis. And that's exactly what our city has been doing, okay? We are just going, when you think back over the last 3 years, roll that tape of headlines in your mind, from crisis to crisis to crisis. The mayor says, well, it's an emergency. This problem has been here, and now all of a sudden, we have to have an emergency meeting called on a Monday for a Thursday when there was a regular council meeting the next Tuesday. Now, I'm sorry, but to me, that was just a reaction for publicity, okay? You want to draw attention to it, but the solution, when we have problems like this that are ingrained in the fabric of our city, you have to approach them with a process, with a procedure, with a protocol. You don't just kind of run in and try and, change the hours of the park and switch out incandescent for, the other kind of LED lights. This is a matter of process and how our city
Debates?
addresses them.
Free time's up.
Thank you.
I agree that you need to look at a multi-pronged solution to this issue, and that's why we brought together individuals on a special meeting, and it lasted over 3.5 hours. And that is not a topic that I'm going to put on a regular agenda. That is, we have other routine business to do, and so I will not shy away from the fact that I did highlight that as a special meeting. But we haven't just started talking about this. When I first came in, we had the diversion program where we were working with individuals that were the least, the lost, and the lonely, and identifying what their issues were. And when they violated a municipal code, we didn't go send them to jail. We worked with them to help give back to the community, to better themselves, go to an AA meeting, to go work towards a GED. So we were working with them. But homelessness is a complex issue that you continue to have to adapt to it, and that's why we'll also bring forward the Downtown Streets team, which is something we're going to consider as a council. All 5 of us will allocate money. I have no authority to do that, but I'll bring forward a discussion that I've been having with the City of Modesto about the Downtown Streets program that puts individuals that are homeless to work to clean up the streets that they live on.
So in reference to the special meeting we had, and I had spoken earlier about the homeless meeting that was happening for about 2 years I had no knowledge base of. When I started attending, someone just invited me, Citizen Joe, and so I went to 2, and so then we started to separate, okay, I'll be business and bathrooms, and so there's people in this room, we're on this committee. We're starting to get some trailers with porta potties that the downtown wanted, and we're rolling. And the next thing you know, we were told, not sanctioned, you can't do this special meeting we're having and we're going this direction. That's not how this works. Turlock is a very collaborative, very generous, compassionate area and community. So why aren't we using these people to help us to do the right thing? There's no way we can do this all at once.
Thank you. Our final journal editorial team question will be on marijuana. In January 2017, the Turlock City Council voted to prohibit all commercial activities related to cannabis, including cultivation and cannabis deliveries within the city. In January 2018, the council adopted a policy to deny approval to any cannabis-related enterprise within Turlock's sphere of influence on county land. Do you think the city of Turlock should lift its ban on cannabis sales and operations? Why or why not? Mr. Bates?
Seems like I'm first more than I think. Okay. First of all, marijuana, it's complicated because it's illegal from the federal level and it's approved at the state level. If we pass an ordinance, we can regulate it, we can tax it. I think right now we're kind of in that Wild West period. Okay, I wasn't around then, but I think we're right in that period between, prohibition and, I wrote it down, the 23rd Amendment. We don't know what's going on, okay? Everybody's approving marijuana. We have dispensaries as close as Denair and Ceres. It is not going to be the economic windfall that I think some people are telling us. Once again, this is not something we should rush into. We need to evaluate it. We need to get input from our police chief. I just think it's one of those issues that should be studied, should be measured. We don't need to rush headlong into approving marijuana dispensaries in Turlock.
I agree with Mr. Bates. It does need to be studied. It's an issue where, like you said, you have the federal government that has outlawed it, and we have a lot of federal money that is tied up there, so you don't want to violate federal law, but the state of California has legalized it, and you also have cities and jurisdictions around us that have legalized it, that have dispensaries and grows. And so we actually created a task force of the council. Actually, it's an ad hoc committee of Councilmember Scare and Councilmember DeHart, who are actually doing their homework right now, researching it, looking at the impacts around us to the cities of Ceres and Modesto that have these, and looking at where the stressors are on the resources within the city. You're right, it's not an economic windfall forever, but it is immediately. And you look at some of the revenue that they're generating at the city of Ceres specifically, $1.8 million per year. And that's to offset police services, fire services, other things. And so these numbers are something we do need to factor in. It is not forever, but at the same time, we need to be aware of what's around us. We need to be open-minded with what the research comes back from the 2 council members. And if I'm elected, there will be a vote. I would schedule a vote for the end of the year or at the beginning of the year next year.
As your law and order candidate, I still see federal supersedes all. If the federal law says it is not legal, then just because the state of California says it is, or one city or county or whatever thinks that it's all right, we need our federal funding. And I'm sure you just heard us talk about how bad our budgets are. We need money. But I'm listening to Ceres is making a bundle of money. Well, they actually laid off some firefighters and browned out one of their stations. So I'm not sure that it was that economic windfall they were looking for. And then what I always look for is, okay, how did they take our money previously? Redevelopment funds. Okay, so the next governor comes in, they need some money. Then they take it from us, and we have an unfunded mandate. If they take it from the marijuana and they say, we're gonna take this percentage, then we again are faced with something that we need money towards it to keep it, watching with police. And then we're out more than we were if we had just let it be in the outer lining areas.
Mr. Franco?
Well, I think that we just hypocrites, because where the money goes, again, the money goes to who? With everything else, the money continue, piping, you're talking about millions, where's those millions? We need some of that money too, but it never comes through. So we just come and switch whatever, but it's actually all for you. It's you, the one that gonna decide anyway. We don't have nothing to do, but you vote. You vote on it, it's on you. It's the public. You have the power. It's not about us. It's about the public. The public stays with our own cities and towns. So you are the voice. It's time for you to use the voice. What do you want? It's gonna go to the majority anyway. Why put it on the officials? We don't know. We don't know nothing. We just try to pretend, but we just go along with the flow because we need your vote.
Mr. Bates, do you have a rebuttal?
I think marijuana, right now it's the flavor of the moment. It's a distraction, okay? The real issue is economic development, okay? And, marijuana, it's almost like, well, why don't we go out and buy lottery tickets? Maybe we can solve our economic problems for a couple of years if we hit it big in the lottery. We need to focus on economic development. There's two sides, to the budget equation. And one side is revenue, and revenue comes from an economic development. Now, again, when I was mayor, we processed and we put in place 6 milk processing plants in 4 years, okay? We had an economic development team. We went out and recruited. I had an article in the Turlock Journal that said, kiddingly, we should make the Holstein our mascot. That's what economic development is. So when we talk about marijuana, okay, it's the topic of the moment. It's on the list of things we need to talk about, but it is absolutely a distraction to the long-term health of this community, which is a solid basis of economic development. I would have that on the agenda at least once a month, an economic development update from our economic development director.
So one of the reasons Sirius is in the position they are is because their reserves were about $75 per person, where ours were $150 per person. And so they are catching up, and so that's something that we need to take into consideration. I think that what we need to also consider, and I view this in a very pragmatic lens, is the fact that just because the city of Turlock says it's not going to be here doesn't mean it's not here. And we need to be realistic about that and see what how that taxes our resources for public safety and roads and other different things. And so we need to look at it through that lens, and we need to make sure that those folks that are going through Ceres to acquire it and bring it back to Turlock, that are taking home deliveries, that are growing it internally in their own homes, that there's a way to tax and regulate it, and I think that should be on the table. I'm looking forward to the information that's gathered, because as I said, I don't like to take a vote before we have fully researched it, and that's why I voted no earlier, because we didn't have enough information, and I look forward to seeing what research comes back from the 2 council members.
The bottom line is we need money and we need federal funding, and I can assure you that under the President and the Attorney General for the United States, they are not going to be sending any money to any city that is not complying with federal law. So at this point, people can still get what they need medically, very close by, and yes, it will get here and it'll be here. It was here before this topic came up about having dispensaries. People will always do it their own way to get it. But we need to make sure that we're doing the best thing we can for finances.
Mr. Franco, do you have a rebuttal? All right. Okay, our first audience question is, California is currently going through a housing affordability crisis. How would Turlock counter this? Mr. Soysak?
So I think that, great question. I think that this is a land use issue, and this is also something with economic development, as Ms. Bublak was saying. We have a lot of infill projects that we need to encourage and try and push forward, like the ones right off of Monte Vista, the ones going off of Tuolumne, to make sure that we actually have enough houses. But I think that the key is that we make sure the quality of our houses remain high here in Turlock. And one of the things we need to do is make sure we have firm borders, like on Taylor. We are not jumping over there with residential growth, that we don't grow residentially on the other side of 99, where we have industries, because industries and residences don't mix. And that's where you see Modesto and Ceres looking for other areas to expand, because people that own land gave up on the idea that industries were coming, so they allowed houses, and once industries wanted to come, they let industries in, and it became this checkerboard. And that's where you saw decreasing home values. And so we really need to remain disciplined. I think we need to keep that, the Turlock Regional Industrial Park set aside for industry, but we need to force our growth towards the southern end of town. But I think another thing that makes affordable housing actually a reality is not just going to acquire HUD grants and different things, which is something we need to do, something we are doing with the Vina Bella and the expansion there and other housing projects. We also need to make sure we have the resources for these houses coming in. When you develop, you need to look long-term and make sure you have water to go in those pipes. Those roads are taking care of themselves. And so assessment districts came in later on, and that's part of what Mr. Franco was referring to, in the fact that some of our older neighborhoods don't have a built-in funding stream for those roads. They're not in assessment districts, and legally we can't put those in once they're already there. So that's why some of our newer homes in the northern side actually get their roads repaved every 7 years. It's because they pay for it. There's an assessment on their house for landscape and lighting and their roads. And so we need to figure out a way to continue to encourage assessment districts if they want to form within communities. I've said that that's a model. If it's organically within neighborhoods, they want to tackle that, they should be able to do it. But that's part of the way that Turlock's going to expand its affordable housing.
Having been on planning commission for a few years prior to being elected city council, what you learn is that the general plan is reached out to 20 years, and there's a 70% infill that you have to abide by. It's California law. And so that infill means that those people who own these properties don't necessarily have to grow it, which kind of stops everything and makes the price of our city, our housing higher. We're going to get some funding. We've previously gotten it. But the problem is that once we start doing that, people have so much trouble trying to build within our city. We have too many issues with not getting things done timely and having to come back, and it's a moving, revolving door about, well, you should fix this, you should do that. And then the water. If the water goes up, that price is going to go right back into the sale of the house or the renting of the house. And so it's not going to be affordable.
Mr. Franco?
Well, unfortunately, the quality and all this and that and planning and money, yes, for the ones that have, but the ones that don't, what can they do? We live 15 or my, siblings in one room, because what can we do? We are just farmers. We just work in the fields. We cannot afford $500,000, $1 million. It's a dream. We only have $12,000. You know, are they helping us with or giving us a hammer to nails to put a little house for ourselves? No. And the city keeps saying, even including myself, I went to request something, 50,000, whatever. They say, you broke. We cannot allow, you're not even give me a hammer, give me and a nail or something in the city. No, I never been able to do that. And many of us, we don't have the resources, and there is so much material lost again, so many resources, and people keep living the best they can. And these people work, and including myself, for all these years. Hopefully not anymore, pretty close.
Well, I always enjoy it when the conversation comes around to Turlock and housing and our neighborhoods and our planning and how wonderful our city has been planned and organized and developed, and just how beautifully we've developed it. Well, 40 years ago, I was on the Planning Commission. I was on the Planning Commission for 6 years. I was the chairman for 3 years. This is back in the late 70s and early 80s. I followed that with 8 years as mayor. All those general plans that these folks talk about that they think are so wonderful, that's what we put in place. So part of it goes to planning. Now, it would really be helpful to housing in Turlock if we actually had a staff that could start to process things. This is the top level organization chart for the city of Turlock. Now, you can't see that, but what you can see are 8 red X's, and some of those X's are our city engineer, a wonderful gentleman who was liked by virtually everyone. our lead planner, okay? Part of the problem is we don't even have a staff in place anymore to do the processing. So where do you start, okay? If you want to have housing, it's a long-range plan. It's a plan, it's a staff, it's a continuum. So there isn't going to be a magic fix, but if Turlock is always going to be saleable to the community. We are the envy of the valley, okay? All we have to do is maintain that and not lose it. We can't overcharge. We have to keep our prices in line. But in terms of planning, in terms of the community structure we have in place, and in terms of our reputation that we had, if we can put those things back together, we can solve the housing issue and others.
Mr. Soisa, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, thank you. So, there's also actions that we can take that have other impacts. When we have a private dorm that comes in and you approve those 800 beds, that's 800 apartments that free up to allow other individuals that are not students to use those. You need to be thinking outside the box, and that's something that this council has done and we will continue to do. It also goes back to zoning, and I agree, we've built on these great general plans from Mayors Bates and Andre and Lazar, and we'll continue to do that, and we need to make sure we have growth discipline when it comes to how we expand. But also we need to make sure we keep folks in their homes. With Prop 13, with the individuals staying in their homes longer, there are other costs that they have to incur. When there's sidewalk buckles because they're in an older neighborhood because their trees are larger, that's a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 hit to them on a senior citizen on fixed income. So we need to make sure that there's a pot of money. Like you said, we can't change rates for different people, but at the same time we can have a low income or fixed income pot of money that we can have to help offset some of those costs. That's something that we have done as a pilot and we can continue to do when resources are there. So I think that it's a very complex issue that we need to keep moving forward. Just taking a cue from Mr. Bates here.
So it does come down to the fact that we don't have many staff to help us do this. Everybody's left at a high rate of speed, and so we don't have a historical memory. And so people are placed in positions where they're not comfortable. They don't know what they don't know, and that makes it really difficult to have that customer service that you're expecting. And also, we're $2.5 million in the hole in our building department. That's unacceptable. We need to start figuring out how we're going to do this. We paid a consultant $20,000 to come tell us you were getting 29 cents on the dollar. Now here we'll do this, and you'll only get 59 cents on the dollar. We're still going under. We've got to fix that.
Mr. Franco, would you like a rebuttal?
Well, all I can say, again, that we have many resources to use, and we keep suffering. It happens to be that we are the ones that have lived in the less and less kind of neighborhoods and more torn apart. And it's kind of unfortunate. I remember even my younger years to see bigger homes. Are they really needed that big? I mean, and we have little ones and keep dreaming maybe someday we'll get one.
Mr. Bates, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, I'm going to go back to my chart. I will leave this up here, or we can make copies. I'll post it on the website. But I do hope that the community looks at the number of people that have left in the last 3.5 years. I'm not going to make a statement up here. I will just ask you to ask people who have been involved at the city why these folks have left. I will be comfortable with that. Ask the people who know people who work at the city of Turlock. Ask them why the work environment at the city hall is not a place that they want to continue to be. And so, as I say, 9 major positions in our top level management, and we've got 2 X's on the city manager position. And as you know, that took over a year to fill. We now no longer have a city attorney, and we're paying $80,000 a month for contracted legal services. This is the gift that just keeps on giving.
Mr. Soisa, do you have a rebuttal?
I didn't know I got a rebuttal. Absolutely. So you
Yeah,
look.
oh, did you already get the rebuttal?
I did, yeah. But I'll take it. So moving on.
Okay, I probably flipped beforehand. Okay, so who started that round then? I flipped my paper too soon. All right, this is going last question of the evening, so we can have the candidates have time for their closing statements. So this is the final question of the evening that is going to start with Ms. Bublar. Okay, all right, I just looked too early, okay. Should Turlock have an ordinance that limits and makes transparent campaign contributions? Why or why not?
So I voted yes the first time to lower the limit and to be this tin cup thing, and it essentially it's so easy to just maneuver around it that it made no sense. I adhere to what the rule was, but it's so wishy-washy that I just realized that there makes no sense. Let's work with what the state has and just move forward. So this time I just said never mind. I'm just gonna raise the money, and if you think I'm corrupt, if you don't think I'm ethical, then just don't vote for me. I can appreciate that there are people who aren't going to, but I've never gotten everybody's vote, and I've never gotten everybody's endorsement. And look at fire. I didn't get fired because I didn't vote to give them some positions. Probably I'm okay with that. I believe that each of us is taking an oath to uphold the federal, the state, and the local ordinances. And that's a sufficient amount to me. If you're gonna see every single dollar that I've brought in, that in and of itself tells you that I'm being as upfront and as transparent as I can, and if anybody wants to ask, please, I'll provide anything I have. But to continue to make it cumbersome for our staff member who's trying to do everything all by herself, that's just not gonna help us. We're behind, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. So our minutes are supposed to be printed out, and we're 3 or 4 months behind. That's because we're having to do all these other things. And you're gonna know if we have, how much money we have and where it came from, no matter what.
Mr. Franco?
Well, I don't have nothing to offer, so I know, therefore, what can I offer you? I cannot offer for myself, even to have enough publicity. I cannot afford anything, but I'm not here to ask for your money. I'm here for the voting. If people want to vote, at least I don't have nothing and nothing to lose anymore, so I'm okay with it. So, yeah, I mean, it's real true. I mean, all the situation, I think I have to be voted back because it will cost me less to live over there. But that's why I'm not asking for money, because, it's probably take a humiliation. I would love to do that, but for enough money, no, it's not worth it, because I have to live with my conscience, and I don't have. The real deal is because we don't have the money, and I think it's only balance it out, because the ones that we don't have, that's why probably I'm here. Otherwise, I couldn't afford the campaign, even to pay the city. But I guess they waived my way. So they say, okay, Mr. Frank, you don't have the money, we know that. So that's why they allow me to talk, and I really appreciate your presence. But yeah, I don't have the money, not even to afford a sign. So, and I lose my job too, so there it goes.
Mr. Bates?
Okay. This is one that hits my hot button, okay? It took 3 major issues before I decided I am not going to sit by and watch this anymore. The first one was the farmers market. You all know about that. The second one was when we proposed the campaign finance reform because of the incredible abuses that took place in the prior campaign. Myself, former council member Jackson and Hilbert, we proposed a very legitimate campaign finance tin cup reform package. It was kicked to the curb immediately. The mayor had a series of meetings. Remember, we had them all over town. We had a meeting in every quadrant. It took a whole year, and the ordinance that is currently in place, and I did not sign it, it is meaningless. And the mayor, and you can correct me in your time, is not following his own ordinance. Now, the current pledge says he will only take $1,000 from any business, person, or organization. I can name on the current 460 form at least 5 instances right there in front of everybody where this is, in my opinion, blatantly violated, okay? So what is the point of having these rules? Again, those laws are there for a purpose, okay? We have the FPPC requirements from the state. They're very clear. Under $99 and you don't report them. Over $99 and it's reportable. That's good enough for me. When we play these games, like saying, oh, we're gonna report everybody that donates over $1, but we're not gonna list the amount, that's just a list of names. That's ridiculous, okay? If you say you're going to limit your contribution to $1,000, that's what that means. So $1,000 from mom, and $1,000 from dad, and $1,000 from mom and dad's business. Is that $1,000? Let's see, my math, 1, 2, no, that's 3.
Well, I appreciate it, but mom and dad are each individual people, and they both love and support me, so they're going to each give me, well, maybe $10. But no, I think at the end of the day, it's only meaningless if you want it to be meaningless. And you talked about the clerk being overstaffed, and so that's why we made it voluntary. We were not going to have our clerk be the police officer that was going to go out and make sure that we were in violation or not. We were going to make sure that this was a public display of our donors, and it was very simple. It was $1 or more, and those names are displayed within our agenda. If you have your 460, which is our requirements for the state, you need to still adhere to all those rules. And when you update those 460s, make sure you update those names so everyone can see who donates. And so I have adhered to that. I would challenge you on those 5 names. We have been working hard to make sure we get donations from all over town, from all different individuals. We have donations of $10, $25, all the way up to the $1,000 mark. And so we're very proud of having a diverse group of people that come together and support us. And so, you know, I appreciate the fact that you also kind of want to talk about, using my time, about staffing. And, you know, I was concerned about it because you keep talking about this alarmist staffing or leaving. So I decided to pull some of the data about staff that actually did leave. And so in 2008, before we had a major crisis of laying off about 25 individuals, I looked at TAPO, our police organization, and management and fire. And what I found was, in that year, 9 people left from TAPO, 5 from management, and 2 from fire. And so then I looked at the average of 2015, 16, 17, the years that I've been here. This mass exodus supposedly was occurring. And I looked at TAPO, 9.3 per year, management 2, fire 2. So it actually is in line with a turnover, especially when an economy is strengthening and individuals go to other cities for other employment opportunities or they retire. So to lay all of that at my feet is erroneous.
Ms. Buglass, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes. So the tin cup is voluntary, and we all know there's no one policing this. So how do you know that there's actually being abided by? It makes no sense. I tried it my last two years ago. It made no sense. This time around, I'm not doing it.
Mr. Franco, do you have a rebuttal? Mr. Bates, do you have a rebuttal?
I'm almost tempted to rise to the challenge because I can name the names right now, but I'm not going to do that. Folks, it is on the city's website, okay? It's the 460 form, okay? Just look at the names, okay? The mayor says, oh, it's mom and it's dad. No, it's mom and it's dad and it's the business, and this is a small town. We all know how to connect the dots between business relationships and personal relationships. I just find it incredibly disingenuous to put forth that you're going to have this campaign finance reform. I'm going to limit my contributions to $1,000 and then play the same games that they play, you know, up in Congress. It's just a different way of wiggling through the rules. I just find it disingenuous. And again, with that list of donors, a list of donors without the amounts they've given, think about that, okay? The $1 donor is on the same list as the $99 donor, but you wouldn't know it. It's just a list of names. I know it sounds ridiculous, because it is.
It's fairly simple. Our 460s have $100 or more, so they're all listed there. So if there's not a name on that form and it's on the other one, it means they gave me less than $99. And simply put, you know, I take kind of offense that the individuals need to be clumped together with their families, and therefore that's going to be the way you judge how someone could donate money. But, you know, at the end of the day, here's the deal. I have limited myself to $1,000 per entity or person. I'm going to adhere to this because I think it is correct. And you're demonstrating actually the beauty of it is the fact that if you publicly think there's an error, you should call it out and we can correct it. Because isn't that the whole point? Isn't that the whole point of this, where we actually just come together and say, hey, let's try and be on the same page. Let's try and keep limit money as much as possible. It does cost money to run a campaign. And go from there. So if you see an error, please contact me and we'll change it. But I worked very hard to make sure that there aren't any errors.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We're now going to go on to our closing statements. Mr. Franco, you're up.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say much because then I feel like I keep talking. But the thing is, you know, I'm really enjoy being in this town, and this is part of my dream when I came here as an immigrant. And if you hear me and don't feel like you can really understand, is like I say, I learned the language when I was already an adult, but fortunately enough, I live in places worse than ever. And through those experiences and being able to go to schools and universities and all that, it has been really a pleasure to being able to acquire the dream, but half of it because I didn't acquire the money, but the generosity and having you here is more than I need, because I'm going to live with that dream anyway, having you at least one night, the one night I dreamed, the baby became today.
Mr. Bates?
Thank you. I entered this race not because of specific issues. I entered it because I have concerns about ethics, honesty, transparency, simple things like letting city employees do their jobs without intervention. Friends, this is why we have elections. I'm running because I think people should have a choice, and until I entered the race, it looked like you weren't going to have one. It was pretty clear that with the endorsements that the mayor got and starting a year and a half early, the intention was to clear the field and run unopposed. You have to earn that. Okay, now you have a choice. If you're happy with how things are and how things have been for the last 3.5 years, then I would say yes, vote for the incumbent. If you want things to be about the same, but if you prefer maybe a different face and a different gender, then you have another option. If you want a true, meaningful change from what we have experienced these last 3.5 years, and you would like a different experience in the additional 4 years, then I would ask for your vote. I want to also ask you to keep one additional thought in mind. If Mayor Soyseth is reelected, and that's a very distinct possibility, Councilmember Bublak will still be on the council. Their ability to coexist will determine whether the Turlock City Council will be a functional and productive body. I have done this job before without the drama, without the trauma, without a bankruptcy, without a scandal, without anything else. We had our controversies, but at the end of the day, we took care of business and we did what was best for the city of Turlock. You see those results today when you look around. I would ask you to please evaluate carefully, vote thoughtfully. The future of Turlock is in your hands. Vote for the Turlock that you want.
It's really easy to be against something but not for something. And tonight I tried to lay out my vision, which is something I did in 2014. I talked about water, and I talked about how we need to get another source. And we broke ground on a wet well, which is now going to bring water to our pipes in 2022. I talked about road funding, how we needed to have another source of road funding, and that's where Measure L came to play, and I fight every single day for matching funds to bring back to the city of Turlock. And so these are the issues that I think we need to stick to. We do need to curb the playground politics that has come into this mayor's race, and I would encourage individuals at this table to stop the name calling and stop the negativity. When I go to classrooms at Prittman High School or at Turlock Christian School, I have to look at those kids and I have to be proud of my campaign. And I'll tell you right now, I'm very proud of my campaign and my supporters, because we've stayed positive, we've stayed issues focused, and we've stayed constructive. And we're not going to name call. And I would encourage everyone in the audience to continue to do that. I want to thank my family and friends for their support. It has been a little rough, but at the same time, I am convinced that I am the best option for 4 more years in Turlock. I've been humbled to be your mayor for the last 4 years, and I hope I can earn your vote for another 4. Thank you.
I hope you've all enjoyed tonight's debate as much as I have. I actually believe that the voters have a clear choice for mayor, and the future of Turlock is in your hands. So I want to point out that while my opponents have good intentions, I am the only candidate with 23 years of police law enforcement time and 10 years of recent experience as a council member. My goals and plans for meeting the challenges facing Turlock are 5. Grow our income base to create more jobs and not raise your taxes. Provide additional funding to improve our public safety. Improve your local roads. Stop the plan to double the Turlock's water rate, and create a service desk to resolve citizens' issues in a timely manner. So for these reasons, I humbly ask you for your vote on November 6th or before, Amy Bublak.
I want to thank all of the candidates tonight for coming out and sharing their vision for Turlock. I want to thank everybody here for such a civil actually got to get through some good issues. You can watch this debate at turlockjournal.live or turlockjournal.com. And also on your way out, if you haven't already, pick up the Election 28 section that has information on all your mayoral candidates, your Turlock City Council candidates, and your Turlock Unified School Board candidates. There's also free 209 magazines and Turlock journals out there, so grab one and the 209 Business Journal. So take it with you, read it.